like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, August 27th. And if we'd all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin today, are there any items that one would like to add to the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to make one change.
Okay.
The 7C and 7D, we've put those two back together this morning. So they're both IRRB revenue bond grants, and we had separated them on the agenda. And IRRB is going to approve them together as one. So there's just a little misunderstanding how to present it here. So we put them back into one item, that's all.
All right.
Same information.
All right. Any other clarifications or adjustments to the agenda? I would like to add one item, recognition of staff. And maybe to do that prior to public comment. Any other adjustments or changes? All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Anything further? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Well, one of the items that we have added to our agenda is a recognition of staff, a recognition of Brian Silence. And for nearly a quarter of a century, Brian Silence, our dedicated maintenance director, has worked tirelessly to provide a safe and clean environment where county departments could conduct their vital public business. His meticulous attention to detail and approaching our workplaces that are not only functioning but welcoming is greatly appreciated by this board. Many of us have taken comfort in knowing that our facilities are cared for thanks to Brian's leadership and dedication. Beyond maintaining our buildings, Brian has also managed the complex task of purchasing and maintaining our county fleet. All those vehicles. His oversight has ensured our departments have reliable, efficient transportation, enabling us to meet the needs of our community in an effective fashion. Brian's prudent management has not only kept our fleet in top condition, but it's been a model of fiscal responsibility, which is important to all of us. Moreover, Brian has been an integral part of our team in providing security and safety for our buildings, our staff, and the public who use our facilities, and his commitment to creating this secure environment has allowed all of us to work and serve with a peace of mind, knowing that the well-being of staff and the well-being of the public is always Brian's top priority. Brian, your professionalism, your dedication, and hard work have left an indelible mark on Cook County. You've been a mentor, a leader, and a friend to so many of us, and always ready with a solution to any challenge or any repair for equipment, whether it's in the middle of the night or on a weekend. And you've served with a smile that brightens oftentimes the toughest of days. Your legacy will continue to inspire all of us, and we'll miss your presence and expertise, but we're excited for a very well-deserved retirement filled with relaxation, joy, and some new adventures. On behalf of the board, thank you.
Thank you.
We won't make you do a speech.
Madam Chair,
No, he doesn't talk.
if I could just add, we had a reception yesterday afternoon for Brian, and it was heavily attended. There are a lot of people, both in our organization and in the community, who know Brian, who have relied on him for not only taking care of county buildings, but he snowplows driveways. He's always there to help people when they need a hand. And Brian, I just think the world of you. I'm so glad that you're reaching this point where you can take a well-deserved break, and hope that your retirement is a very happy one. Thanks for your service.
All right. Well, we'll move on from our recognition to public comment. And this is an opportunity for citizens to appear before the county board on any matter of concern. And when invited to speak, please speak into the microphone for clarity and sign in, and for the record, state your name, address, and the topic you're addressing. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak this morning? All right.
My name is Ron Wizakowski. I live in Hoveland. I don't know if you need my street address, but it's 54 Stonegate Road.
Oh, sir, please sign in, too.
Am I not?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed that cannabis was on the agenda today, and that's why I wanted to stop in, because I have a brief question. 10 years before I retired, I was working for the federal government, and as such, we were subjected to random surprise drug tests, and I'm just wondering if that will be something that state, local, and elected officials will be subject to. And I don't know if Molly has that answer, but the reason I ask that is because if you go to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, it tells you all the effects. One of them being difficulty with thinking and problem solving. And I'm just wondering, I would like everybody to be alert when they're on the job, whether they're driving a truck or making decisions about taxpayer money. And so I was just wondering if that's a thought. Is that a consideration for doing random drug tests or not?
All right. Well, thank you for your comments, and make sure you sign in so we have it.
Yeah, I have it there. So, and if I can, I'll cede my minutes to Carolyn.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Carolyn Dry, and my address is 406 Second Avenue East, and I'm talking about cannabis and also about the MOU. Cannabis, very briefly, was a university professor for, I don't know, almost 30 years, and if somebody asked me the same question over and over, or if they forgot and didn't come to class or whatever, I'd ask the kids, and they'd say, oh yeah, too much pot, send them to the dean, they'd come back and be a new person, and I could see the effects. And they drank a lot too, but the drinking was not nearly as damaging to their performance as the cannabis was. So I'm not a prude, but I did see the effects. They're very remarkable. So anything we can do to cut down on that, I think, is a good idea. About the MOU, you've heard me before, you're probably tired of me, but anyhow, it's a contract. Anytime you give money for performance, it's a contract, and I would like to have an analogy for this situation that we're in. This contract was put together, I don't know, anyhow, I'd like to use an analogy, which is if I hire a roofer. So I pay the roofer. Like in this contract, I don't have a penalty for non-performance. He is supposed to finish it in 3 months, and he has no penalty for if he doesn't do it, or if he doesn't actually roof my roof. He immediately, and these are analogies to what I think has happened with our contract, he immediately takes one of the months off for personal leave. He asks for an assistant, which he gets. He says it's too hard to do the work. He's not accountable for any kind of action because I didn't put it in the contract. He spends his time contacting his boss, asking him what to do, looking up the rules and everything. And in the end, after 3 months, we have no new roof. And he has to be paid again, and I should hire him again for 3 months. I'm not going to do it. I recommend that you don't endorse this contract with the University of Minnesota. The analogy is apt, We've had this contract in place for 3 years, an agreement to pay with no accountability. There's been no new initiatives. There was an agreement in the contract, and still is in there, to start FAA. That has not happened. There's no penalty for not performing that. There are lots of rules and reporting back to the University of Minnesota, not to us, but to outside entities, not to the citizens here. There's been some insensitivity to people that are volunteering at the garden and the orchard and the farmer's market. The questions have been referred back to the boss, the University of Minnesota, and the needs of locals that usually get answered by an extension person have gone unattended. So now we're asking for another 3-year contract, which I don't think should be signed. Everybody says, yes, the person in the job is a nice person, and it's a new job, she's learning, but I look at performance. This is a contract with our money as citizens, and I think that this position should be accountable to the people in Cook County, not to the University of Minnesota, who decides if it's done well or not. So it's back to you to own this contract or not. I'm not sure this came before the board in the first case, but now it's yours. If you vote for it, I recommend that you do not.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak this morning? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Christy Kane. I am the interim director for the Arrowhead Regional Development Commission, and Commissioner Storley is our chair. She's doing a great job. But I'm here today to talk just a little bit about ARDC. We're comprised of 3 divisions. My prior experience, I've been with ARDC for 8 years, was as the director for the Aging Division. And we also have the Metropolitan Interstate Council and the Planning Division. So currently, we're making some informed decisions and about the direction of ARDC and the leadership, and we're doing some internal polling and consideration with our staff, and then also with external stakeholders. The board will take that information and make some informed decisions about our future leadership and the future direction, and some very thoughtful time and effort is going into this to make sure ARDC is serving the full region well and under good capacity. Today, though, other than introducing myself, I wanted to bring a couple opportunities forward. I've given some handouts to the commission members. One is ARDC has just launched in partnership with St. Louis County. St. Louis County has received, they've been funded for a 4-year, $1.85 million grant from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration around advancing regional climate resiliency for Minnesota's Lake Superior coastal region. So as a key partner, one of the things that we are doing is hiring a climate resiliency planner. That position was just launched yesterday, and we're hoping for some really good feedback on that. We're hoping that we will have somebody in place by the end of October. There's the partnerships in this work that St. Louis County is launching include Carleton County, Lake, and Cook County, as well as Boyce Fort, Fond du Lac, and Grand Portage communities. And there's 5 main strategies, which would include establishing a regional resilience and collaborative, incorporating Indigenous knowledge, building community capacity, creating a regional resiliency plan, and providing resources and technical support to the communities. So I just wanted to let you know that that work will be launching this fall. We're really committed to ensuring that all community members are actively involved and benefit from this initiative, so we'll be soliciting community feedback throughout the process. and you'll see some more of us up in this region. The other thing that I wanted to just note, there is kind of a green sheet in there. It's a separate program, Energizing Our Communities program. It's braided funding with 3 different grants. That funding will be available, well, the work will be available throughout the entire region, but the funding will be available to communities with populations of 15,000 or less that can apply. I expect RFPs and grants will open up again this fall. Communities can apply, and it can be a number of things. You could have energy audits done on your public buildings. It could be changing out infrastructure, light bulbs, those types of things for energy efficiency. Could be writing energy plans for your community. So there will be opportunities. I just want you to be aware. Josh Bergstead will be our primary contact, as well as the energy planner that will be coming on board. And I wanted this commission to be aware that those funds are out there. Communities can also be defined different ways, so not just the city, could be township, could be the county, all of those things. So I just wanted to put that out there, introduce myself. I am available anytime for questions, and I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak this morning? Any other members of the public that wish to speak? Are there any written comments that have been received by commissioners? Commissioner White.
Yes. I just have to find it. I just had it. Honest. Hold on. Yes, this came in late yesterday or last night. I'm not certain. This is from Teresa Donovan. I don't have her her address. However, she writes, "Dear Mr. Yorkie, since I am unable to attend the regular commissioners' meeting because of my work schedule, I would like you to be," the writing's too small. Hold on.
Commissioner, I'd be happy to read it.
Do you have it?
I do.
Read it with good emphasis and everything. Don't make it be dry.
Wow, the pressure is on.
That's right, like emphatically, okay?
Okay. So, as Commissioner White said, the letter is addressed from Teresa Donovan in Hoveland, Minnesota. She writes, "Dear Mr. Yorkie, since I am unable to attend the regular commissioners' meeting because of my work schedule, I would like you to share this public comment related to the cannabis ordinance on the agenda. I strongly object to the local government allowing recreational marijuana stores in our county. Just because the state has allowed the legalization of marijuana does not mean we will have to participate in the sale of marijuana in our county. I ask that the commissioners put our locals before profits. We are already an area that depends greatly on tourist dollars. What will happen when we make Cook County a marijuana destination? We can follow Maine's example. After marijuana was legalized, only 47 of Maine's 500 towns allowed for retail, retail marijuana stores. Many towns left this to the people to vote on. I think Cook County should allow the question of bringing recreational shops to the voters through a ballot referendum. On top of this, we can discuss the unforeseen issues with allowing recreational marijuana in licensed stores. We only have to look to other states who are well into the legalization road to understand that there's a correlation between legalization and a rise in, quote, cannabis use disorder, unquote. A study published in 2023 by the American Medical Association highlights the need to screen for cannabis use disorder, pardon me again, in states where recreational marijuana use has passed. The public needs to be aware of such risks, such as impaired driving, mental health problems, brain development, and cardiovascular issues. In a county that deals with chronic understaffing at the hospital and the sheriff's department, is the county prepared to deal with the fallout from recreational marijuana stores? And should residents have to pay the price for this by way of increased taxes? Finally, as the spouse of a federal agent, I wonder if the county has considered the ramifications of allowing recreational marijuana stores in a county that shares an international border and has border and customs agents working there. Marijuana is still not legal under federal law. If a resident or tourist is stopped by a federal agent and marijuana is encountered in the stop, regardless of the amount, they will enforce federal law. The county commissioners owe it to their constituents to pause and reflect a bit more on this very complex issue. Let me end by repeating I strongly object to the local government allowing recreational marijuana stores in our county.
Are there any other commissioners who have received written comments? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few here, so bear with me. The first letter is from Don Petrick, and it's in regards to the CJ Ramstad Trail opening to ATVs, OHVs. Economic impact and quietude. I would like to clarify at the top that the proposal states it is for off-highway vehicles. OHVs consist of ATVs, off-road vehicles such as Jeeps and off-highway motorcycles. Because of this incompatibility with quieter forms of tourist recreation, ATVs, OHVs on the CJ Ramstad Trail will degrade the Cook County tourist economy. A survey by the Nature Conservancy indicated that about 72% of Americans consider the opportunity of peace and quiet in natural settings as a significant reason for visiting parks and other protected areas. According to the Outdoor Industry Association, a majority of outdoor recreation participants, about 80%, are mentioned that the ability to enjoy natural sounds and solitude was an essential part of their outdoor experience. This data suggests that the great majority of tourists come to Cook County to experience the peace and quiet of nature. Motorized recreation is noisy and spoils the experience of those who want a quiet nature experience. A study by the Wisconsin DNR found, when comparing the compatibility of all other land-based activities with hiking and ATV riding, it is evident that ATV riding is incompatible with every other land-based activity but snowmobiling. Hiking, on the other hand, is supplementary to, and then he gives a document that a person can look up. The economic implications of this finding are that tourist revenue from ATVs, OHVs on the CJ Ramstad Trail would be substantially offset by a significant loss of revenue from people who chose to go elsewhere to seek the quietude and spend their tourist dollars. Maybe Wisconsin, since this study suggests the state is already addressing this issue. And then he refers to Minnesota Statute 116B. A comment in the proposal suggests the trail road would be inclusive. In reality, given the incompatibility with other forms of recreation, it would become exclusive to other activities. The noise of ATVs, ORVs will extend well beyond the CJ Ramstad Trail Road in all directions. My home and neighbors are approximately 1 mile from the CJ Ramstad Trail. In winter, when outside, I can easily hear the snowmobiles on the trails. The ATV noise would be comparable but more disturbing to people because it would occur when more time is spent outdoors during the warmer weather months, and also when more people are visiting Cook County. Noise also has an adverse effect on animals and human health, which would become year-round with ATV, OHV traffic. There are numerous studies documenting this impact. Not sustainable environment impact. This proposal says the trail road would be sustainable, inclusive. It would be neither. The correct meaning of sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future. Fossil fuel emissions from building, maintaining a trail or road, trailering ATVs to the trail, riding the trail, will all compromise the future given climate change crisis. The proposal itself states that the ATVs, OHVs leak fuel, Transmission fluids and coolant will also enter wetlands and any other water via runoff from rain events. With all due respect, calling the project sustainable is like putting lipstick on a pig. Turning the trail into a year-round use also compromises the future by increased habitat fragmentation, sediment erosion, and chemicals into trout streams and negative wetland impacts. Currently, compared to an ATV trail or a road, much of the C.J. Ramstad Trail is minimally disturbed with natural vegetation growing on it. It is protected from damage in the winter due to snow cover and the frozen ground. As it exists, it probably presents less of a habit fragmentation barrier to animals, but to mitigate damage that OTV, OHV, rutting, and sediment erosion to that trail would need to be reconstructed more like a road, which, along with the increased year-round traffic, would add to the habitat fragmentation problem. May I suggest the Cook County market itself as the last quiet place, what people come for. My sincere thanks to the board and staff for your considerations to these concerns which I share with fellow county residents. And he's at 132 Willard Lane. The next comment is from Heather and Jake Munch from 1245 Pike Lake Road. Dear County Board Commissioners, please do not request that the Minnesota DNR amend the master plan for the C.J. Ramstad North Shore State Trail to include the use of ATVs. This would be detrimental to the wetlands and the valuable habitat they provide. In addition, this would increase both the noise pollution and actual pollution to the surrounding areas. Please consider consulting with the stakeholders, including residents, and providing thoughtful research prior to moving forward with this request. Thank you for this consideration in this manner. The next letter is from Caitlin Kimmel-Haas, 1400 Pike Lake Road, Grand Marais. Dear County Board Commissioners, I am writing to you today in regards to the agenda item 4A on Tuesday, August 27th, 2024 board agenda. Recommendation for ATV use for the C.J. Ramstad North Shore State Trail. I am writing to you today not only as a resident of Cook County, but also as an expert in biodiversity, science, and ecology. I received my PhD in ecology from the University of Minnesota in 2020 and have been working in the ecology and data science fields the past 4 years. I am the author of 13 scientific articles focusing on biodiversity changes and statistical methodology that have been published in journals like Nature, Conservation Biology, and Proceedings from the National Academy of Science. While the report from Mitch Travis details the implications to wetlands from the trail improvements, it neglects to mention any of the other potential environmental degradation that would occur from increased traffic and use of relatively quiet trail in the summer. I am no stranger to mitigating the impacts of construction on wetlands. I worked at an environmental consulting agency that did stage 1 and 2 wetlands delineation for natural gas drilling in northern Pennsylvania, and am married to the Cook County engineer. I understand that folks go into projects with the best of intentions to minimize construction impacts on the natural environment. However, these construction impacts may be long-lasting as ecosystems need to come back to the equilibrium or shift into alternate state. Further, I'm concerned with other impacts that this trail improvement may have to the ecosystem outside the wetland degradation. Several studies referring to a Zeller study in 2024, a systematic study in 2022, and a Sensky study in 2020, which were attached, have shown that human recreation and even just noise from human recreation can significantly alter animal behavior and ultimately biodiversity. As residents of this county, we need to ask ourselves, where are the trade-offs between human use of trail and preservation of our natural ecosystems? There are no numbers or data provided in the Travis report referring to wildlife impacts. How can the board make an informed decision without data backing up this request? Senske and colleagues from 2020 show that sensory pollution, like light and sound, can impact bird mating success. I live on the southern half of Pike Lake, along which the C.J. Ramstad passes to the north. We pride ourselves in the fact that our lake offers a habitat to at least 2 loon families, a merganser family, a mallard family, and has resident bald eagles nesting in the white pines that border the trail. I firmly believe that human use and benefit should not outweigh the potential impacts to preserving our ecosystems and biodiversity. Further, I'm concerned with the ability to maintain this trail. The report notes that grants will be used to get funds for upkeep, but without coordinated efforts, my family has seen many ATV trails fall into disarray. They become mud pits with deep ruts, making the modes of recreation at this trail currently more difficult. I would like to see a detailed financial plan from the groups proposing to maintain the trail, along with details on how the upkeep will be done consistently and who would be responsible for failures to maintain promises. Alternately, a 60 to 70 mile stretch of trail deserves more than a brief discussion of potential implications and benefits before being unanimously passed. I have not been convinced that this trail improvement would provide so much benefit that it outweighs its potential to impact local ecology and the current use of the trail. Show me your impact analysis so we can make an informed decision. And my last comment is from Robert F. Kimmel, 1400 Pike Lake Road. Dear Board Commissioners, I'm writing to you as a resident of this county, a professional engineer, and an avid snowmobiler and ATV rider. This is not an official statement from the Highway Department. I am writing in opposition to the proposed expanded use of the C.J. Ramstad Trail for several reasons. First, why is this needed? There are already several different routes that ATVs can take on roads that already exist and are wide enough to handle two-way ATV traffic. The maps are provided in the agenda even show these roads. From the county border, there's Kramer Road, 600 Road, and the Grade. Each of those connect to the Sawmill Trail, which brings you up to Rice Lake Road. This connection brings you east to the Caribou Trail, which links with several roads, including Murmur Creek Road, Mark Lake Road, and United Forest Service 331. All of these east-west roads connect you toward Grand Marais. Adding ATV traffic to the C.J. Ramstad Trail appears redundant and unnecessary. You'll probably remember concerns that were raised the border-to-border route, and this was on an already existing road in the county. Why is this all of a sudden a better option? Creating a new road for ATVs doesn't make sense. Second, the proposal is to widen the trail. As a snowmobiler who frequents this trail, one of my favorite parts of it is how tight it feels. It also keeps my speed down. Any snowmobiler that likes riding the expressway on the west side of the Gunflint versus the trail on the east side, I bet I can tell you which side goes faster. Widening the trail, just like a roadway, would increase speeds of snowmobilers in the winter. This can present a significantly safe issue for already stressed emergency response system in our community. Widening the trail can ruin the winter wonderland feel you get on a sled when the trees are tight and the branches are overhanging from all the snow. If you haven't experienced this feeling, it is truly magical and something that needs to be protected. Thirdly, maintenance. Existing trails and roads are already in need of maintenance. Why would adding more trails ensure that it actually got maintained? It's easy to build new things with grant money, but it is far more difficult to ensure its long-term success with sustained funds. Is there a budget and proposed funds already existing to maintain the trail? Additionally, there is history and grant-funded projects beginning and ending in fits. Parts get done and then left alone until the money is available again. Is there even any assurance of the proposed trail getting completed? Fourthly, environmental impacts. There appears to be no consideration for the environmental impact of this project beyond stating that it'll get handled in the permitting process. This leaves a lot of room for things to go sideways. The Gitchigami Trail in Grand Marais is a great example of this. The invasive species and erosion that introduced into the area because of that project will have a negative impact for years to come. That project, among others, inspires little to no confidence that the proposed project in front of you wouldn't have the same impacts on our environment. These would be introduced into areas where there are currently no issues like this, and for what? There is also no mention of the degradation of ATVs would have on a trail system. When someone goes to a mudding off trail, is that going to be enforced? Or are we allowing another avenue for people to interfere with our pristine wilderness? As we encroach into our wilderness more and more, we eventually will lose the things that we all love about being in Cook County. And lastly, tourism. How much more do we need to cater to tourists? As previously mentioned, there are already ATV trails to get you from the county border to Grand Marais. These are already roads where they are Forest Service roads or county owned. These roads are already robust, they're built, they've been handling ATV traffic. Why is it a need to be another route when the impacts of creating that route far outweigh the benefit? Would creating this new trail actually bring in more ATV users as the proposal suggests? And how many more tourists can our county handle if we're promising more people visiting during times when there's typically, quote, a break for businesses to catch their breath? I live on the east side of Pike Lake, very close to where this expansion is proposed. As someone who rides around that area quite a bit, I've never thought that another route was needed. Has the public been involved in any way to see if this is a desired event by the community? Nobody has asked anyone at Pike Lake about it, and I assume it's the same for the rest. I hope you'll take these points to heart. The funding for this project would be better spent improving what already exists instead of creating another trail that cannot be sustained long-term. A decision like this requires more than a brief discussion at a committee meeting that favors trail expansion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. I too have received several comments regarding this. First one is from Mike Hofer on County Road 60. Opening up the CJ Ramstad Trail to motorized travel during the hiking, biking, and horseback riding season would be, in my opinion, effectively ending the non-motorized means of exploring and enjoying that trail. How's that for inclusivity? People hike and bike and ride horseback because it's quieter, less intrusive, less destructive, safer, and considers the environment around them. Motorized travel is anything but considerate and inclusive. It's apparent no amount of writing or speaking that I or others might do might wake up people to what they're proposing with this type of project, or in the case of politicians, what they're approving. As we already know too well, there will be wetlands and wild areas the trail expansion travels through, which can't tolerate the kind of motorized use that some feel is necessary for experiencing nature. And unfortunately, nowadays, when people throw out the word inclusive, politicians take notice and are not able to exercise sound judgment and analysis of what that actually means. This results in what I call reverse exclusivity. The trail is already inclusive. Everyone can use the trail in a manner that's respectful and inclusive to nature and other humans, which currently is defined as non-motorized during the non-winter season. There is no mindful reason to change that. The next comment is from Kate Kellenberger on Bearskin Lake Road. I'm dismayed to learn that the commissioners are considering opening the Ramstad Trail to ATVs. The trail was designed for bikers, hikers, and horseback riding. ATVs are incompatible with any other recreation. Imagine being on a horseback ride and a single or more likely a group of ATVs approach, or on a bike. Imagine wrecks caused by driving in any weather, especially rainy weather. The trail will be impassable to all but ATVs. And there are so many bridges. How will they endure the heavy machines pounding at the wood and the beams? And invasives. The trail will be lined with tansy, spotted knapweed, and other invasives. Snowmobiles, when there is snow, do not cause havoc on the environment that ATVs will. Snowmobiles, while noisy, drive on frozen ground and do not usually stray off roads for the respect of their machines. Opening the trail to ATVs will be the end of the multi on the descriptor. ATVs will allow for no other enjoyment except the ATV. And the last remark I have is from Bob Shannon. He indicates that the CJ Ramstad and use of ATVs and OHVs during the non-winter season, especially the wet winter seasons, is concerning. Allowing motor traffic in the warm months may increase the risk of harm to our watersheds. It will require significant and costly measures not only in the planning and construction, but also for ongoing maintenance, oversight, and law enforcement. Although the proposal mentions impact to some resources, which presumably include wetlands, it's short on details. For example, how much wetland acreage will be affected? Other resources will be impacted, but which ones? And what will be the immediate and ongoing impacts to the wetlands and other resources to address pollution degradation from vehicles, which may leak fuel, transmission fluid, and coolants onto the trail, which could leach into surrounding wetlands via runoff from rain events? The most important thing I see here is whether resources will be available to adequately fund long-term maintenance and law enforcement made necessary from expanded trail use. Will impacts be compatible with extensive wetland mitigation efforts already underway by the Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District, or will they just increase the number of issues that SWCD needs to address? The Governor's Climate Action Framework calls for preservation and restoration of wetlands. It would be irresponsible for Cook County to place wetlands at risk for purely recreational use. The trend in Cook County and in Minnesota should be to protect one of our most valuable resources, our wetlands, streams, rivers, and lakes. But to do this responsibly will require significant funding both today and in the future. Please act accordingly and responsibly to restore and protect Cook County's future financial commitments and the Minnesota wetlands for now and for generations to come. Respectfully, Bob Shannon, Cougar Trail. Are there other commissioners that have comments to read? All right, if not, we'll close the public comment.
Madam Chair, will we have a chance to speak when this is an agenda item as Cook County ATV Club members, or is this the only chance?
This would be your opportunity.
Okay, then may I comment?
Certainly, Rhonda. Good morning.
Good morning. The echinacea is beautiful. I just learned that yesterday. That's what it was. Okay, first thing, I want to really clarify too, Mitch Travis's thing said that Rhonda Silence brought this forward. It's not me, I'm representing the hundreds of ATV Club members in the community and visitors to the community. So, and requesting this amendment doesn't mean it's going to happen. The people, every concern just about that people raised will be, it will never be addressed unless we request the DNR to amend the master plan for the North Shore State Trail. So the comment of ATVs will disturb loons, ducks, and eagles, I don't know how my ATV disturbs birds on a lake a mile away. There's a lot of hyperbole about all this. ATV trails have turned into mud pits because of no maintenance, but if I'd love to take you all on a ride, we could go see Hovland Woods, Topty Timber Freer, and the Rice Lake Pancor loops that we've ridden on that we've been responsible for decades. You guys are our fiscal agents for that, and so those trails have been very well maintained. We take excellent care of those. And the grants that are available, we would seek larger grants from like Polaris Industries and Articad and IRRB. In fact, we're in the process of working on getting $25,000 for equipment for mowing, possibly. We don't know yet. We're still working that out, but we're getting in the IRRR system for funding. There's mega ways to get funding for trails, but the Minnesota DNR has grant in aid, and that is like allocated that's solid. We might get a grant. We get, as long as the state, well, I guess I shouldn't say that the state could do it someday, but I mean, grant and aid is a very established system, and we've been averaging about $10,000 a year to maintain the Timber Fair, the Hovland Woods, and the Rice Lake Pancor loops. So the person who mentioned we can ride roads, that we can get across the county on roads, absolutely, we can. It's a hodgepodge. As ATV Club Secretary, I get calls from people saying, how can I get to Trestle Inn from Grand Marais? I don't know. I'm going to have to get that letter, because that I apparently spelled it out. But the point is, it's roads. It's dusty, dusty roads, and it's you're with logging trucks and other vehicles. You're not in the trees. A trail is very different from a road. We have wonderful forest roads that we can ride. We probably have, 1,000 miles of forest roads that we can ride on, but people can take their cars and trucks on those roads. If we can use the North Shore State Trail, it's a scenic, grassy, trees, it's a beautiful, beautiful trail, and it was built with the idea that as a snowmobile trail, it was built high and dry as much as possible away from houses. I'm surprised there's anyone a mile away, because it was built very purposefully back in the snowmobile days. The bridges are enforced to hold up the groomer, which is way heavier than any ATV. Horses, we have ridden with horses. We've done a lot of education. If you're riding an ATV and you see horses, you pull over and just sit quietly and let the horses go by. And it's just common sense. People do that. And one year in the parade, we had a person from the local saddle club ride with us with a sign saying the original four ATV. Anyway, we had horses ride in the parade with us one year. So the local horse group is not opposed to this. They've never spoken out opposed to it. And in fact, it seems like they're leaning toward being in favor of it, and also the mountain bikers. One of the Parks and Trails members, actually two of the Parks and Trails members, said they would like this because then the trail would be mowed, the grass would be down, because they said right now they can't use the North Shore State Trail in the summer because the grass gums up their bikes and stuff. So there was a mention of the law enforcement concerns about how this would impact law enforcement, and I think Mitch Travis shared the letter from Sheriff Eliason, and Sheriff Eliason supports this because they've gone to rescue people on trails that they can hardly walk through. So they endorse, keeping this trail nice and safe. I think that's all my comments that I wanted to answer to, but I really wanted to stress that if you pass this today, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's going to go to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for their review, and that's when they'll look at the wetlands and see what needs to be done, and that's when they will allocate money to take care of those. So, but if you don't do this, we've been trying to do this in 1990. from 1998 to like 2000, I have that in here somewhere, the North Shore State Trail was identified by an DNR planning group as being a nice backbone to get from here to Silver Bay. And that's how long ATVers have been asking for this, and asking for the reviews, asking the DNR to review the trail. And a lot of the work has been done. The trail is basically high and dry. There are places where maybe we acknowledge that you can't ride down into Grand Marais from County Road 6 down into Grand Marais that's where the patterned fen is, where the hiking trail goes through there, and it's a kind of a mucky mess. So we said, no, we're not going to ask for that. So the ATVers are realistic that, we may not be able to use every inch of the state trail, but unless the state trail the plan is amended, the DNR won't look at the state trail to see, maybe it won't be the whole 50, 70 miles. It might only be a segment here and there. But if we can get off roads and dusty roads shared with cars, it would be nice. So I think there's a lot more. There's almost every argument that comes up, the ATVers have proved ourselves responsible. The people that visit Cook County and live in Cook County are generally responsible folks. And please, let this move on.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Good morning.
Morning. My name is Josh Engelman. I live at 2226 County Road 7, Grand Marais. I am the treasurer of the ATV club. We also enjoy just riding our ATVs around the county. And a couple things I wanted to just reinforce is one, this doesn't say we're going to do this right away. It just gives the DNR saying you would like the DNR to take this up and look at it and give their opinion on would this work. Secondly, when you talk about riding on roads, if the county and people want us to ride on the roads more, it increases the interaction between the ATVers and vehicles and increases the risk of something happening there. The more we can get off the roads, the gravel roads, the highways, anywhere, the safer it is for everybody involved. And we try to be respectful, we try to be considerate when we come across other people using the trails, and we just like the opportunity to prove that we can keep this going in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak this morning? If not, we'll close our public comment period and move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items the commissioner wishes to pull? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Storley said hers.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Storley and support from Commissioner Mills. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on now to item 4, land services. And we have Mitch Travis coming forward. Good morning, Mitch.
Commissioners. Thank you very much.
What's this item about exactly?
I think we've heard a robust discussion thus far already. Yeah, so I mean, I guess, would you like me to kind of run through the entire project about like summary and things like that? Or
Maybe a summary would be nice. I think it's important for the public, if they haven't been diving into this particular topic, to at least have a general feel for it.
Sure, yeah. So I am the Parks and Trails Coordinator for the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission. So that's a half-time position that I do in addition to my other work with Cook County Land Services. I do planning and zoning, stormwater, as well as wetland, excuse me, Conservation Act administration for the county, countywide. So, yes, the Cook County ATV Club approached us earlier this summer, kind of regarding this potential project of, amending the master plan for the CJ Ramstad North Shore State Trail. Shortly after that, I coordinated a meeting with Kevin Johnson, who is our region's Parks and Trails Coordinator for the state, essentially. I don't even know if that's exactly his title, but recreation related. So, and, you know, after, you know, talking with the ATV Club and with the state, we kind of felt it would be wise to coordinate a scoping meeting just to kind of discuss the implications of this project. You know, what would be the route for kind of identifying whether or not Cook County wanted this, you know, so this is kind of why we're here today. Just talking, you know, seeing if the county would be amenable to such an idea of, okay, this use that is currently a multi-use trail, mostly for snowmobile use, but also includes the use of, you know, equestrian travel, which gets very little use, from my understanding, mountain biking and hiking, you know, so kind of horse travel, mountain biking, and hiking, kind of more summer use, and snowmobiles in the winter. So, you know, this has kind of been a discussion, actually, you know, as we talked about this, the state did provide a feasibility study back in 2006 for this very project. I neglected to include it on the agenda just because it's a 76-page document that I didn't feel you'd have the opportunity to consume before we had this discussion, but I have it available for your consumption. Yeah, and so just kind of, you know, before we get down to like what are the implications in terms of environmental stuff and, you know, wetlands and all of those things, you know, is the county open to this idea is kind of why we're here. So, yeah, we had that meeting of the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission in July, kind of unanimously, you know, we agreed that we should forward this recommendation to the commissioners and, you know, have your consideration as to how you feel about the trail, get some public input about it, and see where we stand, so.
Are there any questions for Mitch?
Yes, I have questions. Thank you, Mitch. So the trail, how much of the trail is currently open to ATV use?
In Cook County, none of it.
But the trail does have ATV use on it, outside the county.
Yes, in Lake County it does. There are sections of the trail where they do allow ATV use, yes.
But not the whole trail, and do you know why?
I couldn't speak to that very well. I think Kevin Johnson with the state likely could. I mean, basically, Lake County approved the use of that, you know, so it was Lake County's decision that they felt it was a useful, you know, idea to include ATV use on portions of the CJ Ramstad.
And so when we say we're supporting the scoping of this at the DNR, it doesn't mean we are saying the whole trail will automatically be open to ATV trail because it has to go through a DNR process. Do they have public comment during that process?
I believe they would. I mean, I'm not super familiar with all the ins and outs of like, because there would be a two-phase, because it's through a lot of federal land, so there would be the federal NEPA process, as well as it's a state trail, so there would be kind of the state regulatory process as well. And involved in that, yes, there is always kind of portions for public comment, whether it's regarding a wetland impact or, you know, a potential crossing of a stream or something like that. All those are up for public comment as they kind of work through the regulatory process. Yep.
And as somebody who's been on that trail on both a snowmobile and a bike, I know there's differences, and there's areas that might be appropriate, and probably areas it's probably not appropriate for ATV use.
Right.
So I'm assuming we are just, if we say we're open to the idea, it's not our last shot at saying, no, we don't want it there.
Right.
We actually are just asking the state to spend the money to do the work to see, are there any sections that might work for us?
Yeah, I mean, in some regards, yes. So I think kind of the, you know, the way that the use of the trail is described to the state is it's for, you know, these specific uses: snowmobile, mountain bike, hiking, and bike, or I think I missed one in there. But anyway, for those particular uses, equestrian was the other one. So it's kind of just saying, you know, we want you to amend this to include this particular use. And in order to do that, the state's going to have to likely kind of look at the sections that need to be brought up to a better standard, like where there's muddy spots, we're going to have to build up the trail and, make culverts and, stormwater plans to deal with these issues. So it's not saying, yes, break ribbon, get started, break ground. It's just saying, yes, we are open to this idea for this particular use. And so, all of the kind of questions regarding possible environmental impacts and how those are going to be dealt with, we haven't even scratched the surface on that yet, and so, as Rhonda mentioned, there are sections of the trail, like just above Sawtooth, just above the kind of the radio tower, we have that pattern fen, which is a super high value natural resource to the state. And even in that kind of scoping meeting that we had back in June, the ATV club was very understanding and saying, no, we don't want to cross this particular area. We understand the value of it. It would be regulatorily nearly impossible to even engage in that process anyway. So, where can we bring the trail up to a standard, to ferry access through these kind of areas that on this trail that already exists where there's already motorized use, so.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Commissioner White?
To Commissioner Johnson's use firsthand knowledge, you identified that there were parts of the trail where it wouldn't work in your...
Well, I'm not a scientist.
I know, it's like the parts where obviously it seems to be a compatible, but other parts it wouldn't. So what do? You're driving along on your ATV and stop. Can't go any farther, this part is incompatible. Where you have to build another trail? What happens?
Well, I would suggest we look to what Lake County does and how they've connected that. That's why they chose that 6.6 miles of the trail that does connect. There's areas where it might work, and there's other areas where it's probably not appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it a multi-use trail.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all about making sure all user groups are represented. Nobody gets everything, except if you're in the BWCA, I guess. So I'm open to the idea of what can we do to look at the next step. I certainly don't think the whole trail should be open to ATVs. I'll say that right here. But I'm open to the idea that there may be sections that users, and I don't own an ATV, but I've been on an ATV, and we're pretty respectful of where we live. We don't want to degrade our environment, and we'd like to have a place where we are protecting our trails. And I also think as far as bikes, if you could put a bridge across some of those muddy sections, what happened at the Lutzen 99er might not have happened as badly as it did. So we have to look at all of this.
Administrator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mitch, a couple of questions. So the state and the feds both would be involved in this review process, and that makes me think, okay, this is going to take a while, right?
Correct.
Do you have any sense of like what that timeline might be?
I do not. No, so we currently, the state and the feds have, an agreement regarding the use of that trail. And so, there would be, like I said, that two-pronged approach. And this is kind of the way that we kick that off is, is if we agree to this, that kind of, alerts the state that, yes, Cook County is open to this idea, where do we begin? And so, I think we're talking about, think very similar to the Gitchigami Trail, where you're talking sections that are going to need to be updated, built to a certain standard, and it's going to be kind of done piece by piece. And so I don't think we're going to be looking at a whole-scale project where they're going to do 60 to 70 miles of trail. It's probably going to be a couple miles at a time for, likely decades, very similar to the Gitchigami. So.
And then my other question is, following that review, does it come back to the board for approval? Is this like this is not the last bite at the apple for the county board to make a decision about yes or no, we should have ATV use on this trail.
That's an interesting question. I don't believe no. I mean, in the kind of the overall scope of the process, no, it's not our last bite at the apple. But it does kind of set things in motion in a way that I'm not sure how much input we're going to have during the trail building process or things like that. It might, when you get down to kind of the brass tacks of wetland regulation, for instance, as I'm noticing projects, it is going out for, and notifying people that this project is going out. It's fairly rare that, a county entity or even an individual is weighing in on some of these issues. But that's very different, that's a state process, very different to, the NEPA process, which is very open to public comment, through the federal government, so.
Who's this guy now? Oh, you got a haircut.
Thank you, Director Nelson.
Tim Nelson, thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick to address some of these concerns and such. As it was identified that Lake County has segments and that are used and segments that are not used. Clearly, through that process, they worked with the DNR and the feds to identify those and had those. I do not believe that the DNR would allow for a 20-mile segment to just stub out at the end and not have some sort of egress thing. That we would anticipate through, because both the entities, the federal, the feds and the Kevin Johnson from the state, the DNR, who would be working through this, are participants on the county's Parks and Trails Commission. And so we would anticipate that it would be, they would be updating and working through and with the county on each of these phases, through each of these reviews that would take place. As was indicated, this kind of kicks off this review, it starts a process, and because we were dealing with the state and the feds, we can anticipate that it would take quite some time to go through, and during that time, we would get updates from the DNR and from the feds, and we would have the ability to kind of guide and chime in on the impacts and where we would see alternate routes that would be possible. It was already mentioned about the pattern fen. Nobody wants anything going through that and such, and so those would be identified and avoided, and alternative routes would be in place. But this just, as was indicated before, just kicks off that study and review from those, through which we would anticipate a pretty connected dialogue between us and the DNR and the feds through the entire process.
Any other comments commissioners have? Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, so I sit on the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission, and there was unanimous support. There was also good discussion. I would say, well, I shouldn't say all. It seemed like all of the concerns that are brought up from public comment were also brought up at the Parks and Trails Commission, and it was talked through about the process and how this works. And as was stated earlier, if we do not approve this, then it will not be looked at. If we do approve this request, then it can be looked at. And so it's the only real viable way to look at it is to get this to go through. I do want to bring up the idea that maybe the importance of a full-time Parks and Trails director is rising to the top, because outdoor recreation in Cook County is paramount. That is what our county is known for the visitors, is our outdoor rec. We want to preserve that, we want to manage it as well as we can, and doing it with a half-time position is doing it with one hand tied behind our back. I think we should be looking at this. All of the user groups on the Parks and Trails Commission saw this as a really great springboard on other user groups as well. Trying to collaborate and work together to get things done and to support each other. I thought that was really powerful and not something you always see in our rec groups. So that really impressed me. And again, they're pushing for a full-time position, recognizing all the intricacies, all the ins and outs of these processes, and we have an exceptional individual in the part-time position. It's just getting more and more complicated as time goes on, and just the expertise with wetlands as well. It's something we shouldn't take for granted, I'd say. I am not a motorized, I don't do motorized recreation, but I respect people who do. I see the value in that, and I don't want to exclude people. I don't want to be exclusive with other user groups. I recognize that there's a lot of education that needs to happen. I have seen damage done to trails. It's almost always kids, just kids not being responsible, and so some people's kids, But it's, by and large, our community and all the visitors, that's what we value, and that's what we want to preserve and protect. And so it's really important that if we're going to be making these decisions or making these improvements, that we do look at it, but we need to be able to allow ourselves and allow the state to look at it. Otherwise, we just won't. That's, I don't think, where we want our county to be going. I think we want to try to be working together collaboratively to make improvements for everybody, so.
Thank you. One of the things that I appreciate in Sheriff Eliasson's letter was that he talked about helping to improve our wildland firefighter and public safety infrastructure. I see that as a huge piece. But it's also evident to me by the number of comments we received just in the last 2 or 3 days that the public at large needs perhaps to be more involved in this. One question I have, and maybe Mitch, you can respond to this. There's an inconsistency in the cover page and in the resolution. The cover page talks about ATVs and OHVs. OHVs include, if I'm correct, Jeeps, motorcycles, and dirt bikes. But the resolution only says ATVs. And that, I think, may have created a lot of concern and is a concern that I have. I also note that there is seemingly support by other user groups like the Superior Hiking Trail and Superior Cycling Associations. I think it would help our public if we had letters of support from those groups.
Sure.
And then, just to clarify, people are talking a lot about wetlands. I checked both Minnesota Rule and NEPA, and Minnesota Rule 4410.4300 does say that there is a mandatory EAW with this process, and that because of federal lands, NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, gets involved. And I did confirm that. EAW, yes.
Yes, which is?
Environmental Assessment Worksheet, thank you. I did have comment from Ellen Bogardnis-Shamaniak, who is out of the Tofty Ranger Station. She reiterated we have time, so we can take some time to talk about this. She said it'll be 10 to 15 years before this would be potentially completed. So I guess I would like to see maybe a committee of the whole down the line or some opportunity to dig into this, to look at that 2006 feasibility study, letters of support, public involvement, so that we're doing for our community really due diligence before we as a board make a decision. What do other commissioners think? Commissioner Stewart?
Thank you. Yes, I agree that Commissioner Johnson is open to the process, and I agree with that, and I think our conversation is leaning toward that, rather than to right away say to allow construction of a robust year-round multi-use trail, the way it's written here. To be open to committee of the whole, to have more presentation and more letters of support, and just another discussion rather than do a vote today.
Okay. Other commissioners, other questions? Commissioner
Yeah,
Moose?
I don't think there's a huge rush, but I do want to make sure that we're moving forward with this, and I don't know the best way to do that. I iterated my concerns just about staff time and, but yeah, clearly there's a lot of interest here. I think there's going to be a lot of interest throughout, and I'm comfortable with doing a committee of the whole and talking more about this. I think it's also worthwhile and important to talk about the OHV and ATV discussion too. So unless there's a deadline that the state master planning is about to, yeah.
No.
Right. So it's on us, just we want this to get going. kind of how it sits, but.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to recommend this for a committee of the whole discussion, where we can incorporate some of this information, and it will help us as a board and also the public to really understand the issue at hand.
Madam Chair.
Is there support?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Support.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and support. Discussion, Administrator Yorkie.
Yeah, so, thank you, Madam Chair. So just thinking about how this would work and using the Gitchigami Trail as an example. So there would be funding opportunities to kind of piecemeal this together. And I assume that, I mean, would the county be acting as a fiscal agent for some or all of that funding? I'm guessing. So there would be, I'm just trying to get to what the board's role is going to be in the future with actually implementing any trail sections that come out of this. And I'm just trying to, understand what the board's role is going to be. I think that's important to know.
Commissioner.
Well, I'm under the impression we're just saying, look at this idea. There is no funding available yet. That's another process, and we already facilitate the grant and aid trail monies that come in. We do that, and Brady's office does that. You handle that. That's a different step, and we
Understood.
approve that.
Understood.
So that's why I'm like, I don't know, I'm agreeing that we just need to say, yes, let's look at the idea. Let's say, state, yeah, go ahead. Figure out what may work, what might not work. And then we say, no, we don't want that state and aid trail money. We don't want to build that section. I don't know. I don't see a problem with the way this resolution's written. I did notice the difference between ATV and OHV, and I was okay with that.
I just think for the public, it's really important that we're clear what we're doing, and that inconsistency just jumped out at me right away. And that may have been what caused a lot of consternation. So I just think it would be valuable for our public to understand the issues. Commissioner Mills.
Do you think it's worthwhile having committee of the whole discussion? I mean, I don't see it being like, we gotta do this now. I want to try to get it.
This has been in the works for years, putting it off for another meeting. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I don't think we're gonna get the same thing we got today. 50 here, 50 here. That's just my opinion, but if it makes you feel more comfortable, it's fine with me, I guess.
Commissioner Mills.
Do us commissioners have further concerns that we want to explore through a committee of the whole, or is this more for the public's benefit, or what's the intention with the committee of the whole?
Like for me, I would like to see the letters of support from the other associations that share the trail, the feasibility study that Mitch referred to, I think would be valuable for us and for the public. And I just think, public engagement, because this happened, even though it's been talked about for many years, I think it came up quickly, and that's why we have such reaction from the community. So I think it helps for us to study it thoroughly and make sure our public is educated as we are. Commissioner.
So what we're going to talk about and study is information that's been out there, and ultimately, we want the state's input. We want them to spend state tax dollars to, let's do environmental impact statements or whatever they will do to actually do a thorough review of this section to see about the viability of it becoming an off-road trail also. Is that correct? Am I?
I could maybe speak to that, Commissioner White. I think there's maybe a couple of routes depending on how they classify the trail. I mean, if it does become a grant and aid trail, that is a different set of state funds versus, like, say, the ATV Club did an application for a grant to update a section of the trail that's slightly different, So, I mean, it's likely going to go through the same review process either way, but, there might be a little less state input on the route where the ATV club is getting funds, for instance, versus like a grant and aid grant or something like that. So it's dependent on exactly how this goes, and we don't know that for certain yet, so.
Another
So
question,
essentially,
Commissioner
we're
Ward.
asking for state input. So we have more information to share with the public. So we have more information about and there'll be no decisions. You said 10 years, something like that. A lot can happen in that time frame. But I agree with Commissioner Johnson, and not to dismiss the citizens' concerns at all. But as much information as we can get, I think is important, and we're not making a decision. None of us might be here in 10 years by the time this decision is made. I could probably say, I'm not going to be here in 10 years. So, safely say that. However, I believe that passing this and saying, okay, state, give us some more input on this. What will this do? And what are the impacts? And yes, we all are quite aware of wetlands, of the ruts, what ruts can do, noise pollution, we've all experienced it, lived it, however. And I agree with Commissioner Johnson, and we all agree that we who live here want to take care of and do take care of our resources. That's why we live here. So.
Other comments? Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, just another thought I had, and regarding the letters of support, I feel like the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission does a pretty good job of representing the different user groups, and to have that robust conversation there, I think was enough for me to be able to support looking at this further. So I don't feel the need for further discussion with the Committee of the Whole. I am very open to it. I don't see any harm in that. I can see benefit by just getting people more comfortable and familiar with the idea of amending a master plan and looking at what our vision is. One thing I did take away from that discussion, though, was just how valuable the trail is to other user groups and how underutilized it is to other user groups because of the lack of maintenance or mowing even. It's not worth it for a lot of them, even equestrians or bikers. It's just, hikers, I hike on it. It's valuable that way, but, heavy dew makes that a bit of a challenge at times. Walking pets, certainly, it's very valuable, especially close to town here. And so I'd be very comfortable if a committee of the whole discussion is not deemed necessary, making a motion then, and this is of course not a motion, but that we do it contingent on user groups' letters of supports or something like that. But I feel comfortable with the Parks and Trails recommendation as well, so. There's nothing definitive there for anyone, but throwing lots of ideas out.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion. Oh, Director Nelson.
Madam Chair, I just want to interject just a little bit here. If it is, the desire of the board to have as much information as possible, a lot of concerns were thrown out with regards to impacts on the environment and everything. That's exactly what an environmental assessment worksheet is. And so, yes, having a committee of the whole to talk about the existing documents that have been prepared in a feasibility study from 2006, we know in terms of changing environmental conditions and everything else like that may not necessarily be as reflective from 2006 to 2024, that having a current or the most current environmental assessment worksheet study or review done would provide the best, most updated amount of information and perhaps really address a lot of more directly the concerns that were expressed in those in the comments that were made. So I just kind of throw that out there. You could do a committee of the whole meeting, before and then during or after or whatever, but I'm just saying out there that if it is that kind of information that is valuable and would be valuable, that would be they would be the ones to do that, and that would be providing us in this board here with the most amount of pertinent environmental information.
Thank you. Other remarks or questions? All right, we have a motion and a second
Could
to,
you repeat the motion?
sure, the motion was to further study this at a committee of the whole meeting. All right, looking at the feasibility study, gaining letters of support, and encouraging public involvement. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion fails, 3-2.
You said you were going to make a motion.
I said I'd be comfortable. That's not saying anything. I'm usually comfortable. I'd like to make a motion to, let's see here.
Oops.
Approve a resolution to request that the state DNR amend the master plan for the CJ Ramstad North Shore State Trail to allow the construction of a more robust year-round multi-use trail that is available to ATV use, contingent on the letters of support from the 3 user groups that are currently allowed in the summer season.
Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on right now to item number 5. Let's take a short break. Good idea. All right. Thanks, everyone. We're returning now to our Board of Commissioners meeting, and we're returning to item 5, Human Resources. Allison Plummer, welcome.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, I have one item to bring forth this morning. It is a job description update for the county recorder position. So I do want to provide some background on this as well. So the county recorder position has gone through some transition. We've brought a resolution to transition that from an elected to an appointed position. So in preparation for that transition, and knowing that we would have to eventually recruit for this position, looking at our records, we did not previously have a job description on file for the county recorder position. And actually, we don't have any job description for any of the elected positions. And this is common. I checked with my regional counterparts. Most counties do not have. It's very unlikely, more so unlikely that counties have job descriptions for elected positions. So then that put us in a position of, well, we have to have a job description if we're going to recruit and hire for this position. So after obtaining some examples of other county job descriptions for the county recorder position, for those counties that have transitioned as well to an appointed position, we drafted a county recorder job description, went through the review process, just like with any of the other job descriptions that we do, had Dusty look at the job description, had James, and then once that was reviewed and given a thumbs up, going to DDA to review it and provide their input, and therefore we have now arrived at a draft job description, and the grade also was subsequently reviewed after that job description was reviewed and given the go-ahead to review the grading, and that would remain at a 210. It is currently at a 210. So bringing forth really a new job description for a current position, and then reaffirming the grade at a 210.
Are there any questions for Allison? Commissioner
I
Johnson?
do have one. As far as the education and experience, it says bachelor's degree in real estate or similar fields. I'm just curious what that means because I've never heard of a real estate degree. So can you explain to me what that, I'm just not experienced on that.
Yeah, I would imagine, I would imagine that there's going to be some degree that focuses on real estate transactions, what deeds are. I mean, nowadays there's degrees in multiple fields, and those have even changed since I was in college. So, or the pertinent thing too, it says, or a similar field. So someone that would a field of education that would provide some background information for someone going into this position.
So,
But again, flexibility.
Yep.
that's a great observation. I think we probably need to amend that to indicate a business degree with experience in real estate or something. I think that's probably the likelier background.
That makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
A business degree, somebody who, no,
Or
I don't know.
commensurate, I mean, if somebody, there are lots of realtors who don't necessarily have degrees, but having that background is vitally important for
Right.
that kind of position. So we can amend the language to say something to the effect of either bachelor's of business administration or a background in real estate with X number of years of experience.
I think with a background in real estate experience some way is
Yeah.
pretty important.
Yeah.
But I just was curious because I've never seen that.
And I was
before.
thinking the same thing, people with a real estate license or people who have done title work, things of that nature, would have that background that's appropriate. Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, the degree exists. You can get from University of St. Thomas, and I think the language is fine because it covers, like Allison said, related fields, but it does make more sense as well, like you're saying, Commissioner Johnson, and Administrator Yorkie, about just that business degree and related, and then that experience. So I can agree. I could support either way, whichever makes the most sense for getting the candidates that we want.
Yeah, that's all
Yeah.
just clarification of what we're looking for.
Absolutely. Commissioner White?
And as attorneys, there are attorneys that focus on real estate law. And I don't, some of it's kind of like it's continuing education and you learn on the job and so, but they don't have a degree.
A law degree.
You know, they're just a lawyer. I can say that. I have one in my, had one in my family.
Didn't mean to derail, I just was
No.
wanting clarification.
So Allison, do you have some revised language you could share
Well,
with
I was
us?
actually just going to bring up, I had to connect to the network. Another thing to switch from our S drive to SharePoint. So I have to connect to the network because I actually just wanted to double check the educational experiences for the chief deputy recorder. Because I believe that we had some similar experiences listed.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, again, I don't think it's problematic. I just think it makes more sense.
Sure,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. Sorry, searching for it. Oh, boy.
I thought it was an easy question.
We just want to make sure we get the language right, and I think it's important that we hear that language before we vote on anything.
Well, I'm trying to find the. Okay. So the chief deputy recorder position, which we reviewed not that long ago and approved. So we kept these actually in line, the education and experience. So the approved chief deputy recorder position also references a bachelor's degree in real estate or similar field, plus 4 years of relevant experience, or a combination thereof.
Okay. I think we're all
So
comfortable
would
with
we
that.
want to change this?
That's what I'm hearing
Education
from the board.
experience, or leave it with the approved language from the chief deputy position that we did in December?
I'm comfortable with the chief deputy position language.
Okay.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, what I think this does is emphasizes the experience in real estate versus if we say a business degree, that emphasizes business, right? And they can have the real estate on the side, but we really, I think, want to emphasize the real estate. So upon further thinking, I'm liking it, but which way is the wind blowing? Can you say that these are in line currently, the chief deputy recorder, as well as this draft?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Have the same language when it comes to that minimum education experience. Again, and there's built-in flexibility, because it says, or similar fields, plus experience, and then it says, or an equivalent combination of education and experience.
Commissioner White?
And the only certificate or license we require is a driver's license?
And there might be more trainings after, more certifications that they would go through upon being hired, because I think there's certain trainings that they have to do for providing like vital health statistics and records. But at least for being hired, or at least meeting the minimum qualifications to apply and potentially be hired, the only one that they would initially have pre-employment would be the driver's license. And that's standard amongst all of our positions. I mean, just like the assessor's office, we don't require them to have CMA, AMA, all of the different licensure levels, because they do that upon employment afterwards.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the job description for the county recorder, job grade at 210.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Attorney Hicken.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Okay, so as the board agenda item says, the Cook County Cannabis Regulation Ordinance is back before the board today with the benefit of the full board. Commissioners wanted to make sure that Commissioner Johnson had an opportunity to join in the discussion and have a vote on, and to vote on the ordinance if that's the stage where we're at. So as you know, the proposed ordinance, which has been published for public hearing, includes a limit of 14 registrations for cannabis retail businesses. Commissioners at our last meeting discussed whether that's an appropriate limit, or might we wish to cut it in half, or might we wish to limit it to one. If commissioners decide today to change that limit to anything other than 14, we would need to republish the ordinance and hold another public hearing before voting, which is fine. We need to include enough opportunity for the decision and the discussion. So one thing I need to clarify or correct from my comments at our last meeting is I had misremembered the county's authority to limit registrations or to even set up a registration ordinance for retailers of the low potency hemp edibles and beverages. I told you that that is not a power that the county has, but the county does have the power to include in this ordinance, if you so desire, a registration requirement for any retailer of the low potency cannabis, low potency hemp derived beverages and edibles. I pointed out in the cover sheet that you would be doing so without, we as a committee did not thoroughly discuss that. We kind of didn't have it on the table from the beginning. So you might wish for the committee's input on that if you were planning to do that. You'd also be potentially impacting 13 businesses that are already selling those products. If you're going to do that, you might wish to create a different category for registrations. So registrations of low potency hemp edible beverages and edibles, or expand the registration from 14. But all of that is your choice. I don't mean to confuse the discussion. I just had to make sure I corrected what I told the board last time. Looks like Commissioner Mills has a question.
Thank you. So you said we have the authority for the registration. Do we also have the authority to limit the registration?
Yes.
Ah.
I also made a few changes, which I wouldn't call substantive, in the draft proposed ordinance. This is now, I think, the third draft. These changes are to make sure that the ordinance is aligned with the 2024 changes in the cannabis ordinance. So when the Office of Cannabis Management issued their model ordinance, I hadn't noticed that they didn't update, for example, the definition of cannabis retailer to the 2024 version or definition. So now that definition is corrected. And there are some formatting changes. The discussion amongst either the board or the committee or both related to whether each location requires its own registration under this ordinance, or whether it's just each license holder requires a registration. I made it clear in this ordinance that we're talking about every location needs its own separate registration. So if you have a license holder who's, for example, a micro business which can have 3 locations under its license, we require a registration for each location, making it clear that the intent of the ordinance, and I think this is implied in the rest of the ordinance language. The intent of the ordinance is to limit the number of locations by limiting the registrations. So that's in section 2.1 where I made that language change. The other piece that is updated to reflect the 2024 changes in chapter 342 is in the annual compliance checks language. That's in 2.3.4. Because the statute took away the requirement that counties, if they're going to register businesses or require registration for businesses, must do not just age compliance verification, but also operational requirements, compliance checks. So I took that out. Commissioners can put it back in if they wish. Essentially, what I'm aiming to do here is limit the compliance check obligation to the county to strictly what's required under statute and no more. Knowing that there has been some discussion of the resource allocation for compliance checks and are concerned that we don't necessarily know how many businesses are going to establish themselves and how much time and energy it will take of the public health department to do those compliance checks. In the discussion, in some research and also with the OCM's webinar that several of us attended, the understanding that I have is that the state is also not going to do regular compliance checks for those operational requirements. What they'll rely on is it's going to be a complaint-based system. So if, for example, our public health staff goes in to do an age verification compliance check and they notice, oh, these aren't properly labeled products, or this security system isn't in compliance with the statute, we can make a complaint to OCM, and then OCM may investigate. The statute specifically says OCM can choose not to investigate, though. So it's a balancing act. Do we want to dedicate resources here at the beginning of the process to the county doing operational compliance checks, or do we want to rely on the state and have faith that they will respond with an investigation when appropriate? So again, that's in section 2.3.4. Just see if there's any other changes to point out. Not really, other than formatting. I do want to address some of the public comments or questions that came up. Our Hovland residents who had a comment related to state and local employees, whether the county is going to subject or does subject our county employees to testing or random testing, such as the federal or tribal employees do. I would draw your attention to two different human resources policies that Cook County has in place. These policies were specifically, recreational adult cannabis use was legalized last year in August. And anticipating that change, or maybe shortly thereafter, I did review with Human Resources our two drug testing policies for county employees, and we tweaked them both to make sure that they were up to date with the law. So there are two separate policies. One of them applies to all county employees, and the other applies to only commercial drivers who have a CDL as part of their, and use it as part of their employment. And the reason there's that distinction, of course, is because the CDL drivers have federal regulations that they have to abide by. They are subject to random testing. And so our policy is consistent with the Omnibus Transportation Employee Testing Act for commercial drivers. And it says circumstances under which drug or alcohol tests shall be required or requested include during the application process, for reasonable suspicion, post-accident, random testing, and return to duty and follow-up testing. And this policy prohibits commercial drivers from using, possessing, selling, transferring, or being under the influence of drugs or alcohol while working or performing job duties. So they're prohibited from being under the influence. If there's reasonable suspicion that they are under the influence, they may be tested, and they may also be randomly tested. Those are all, part of the burden that goes with the responsibility of being a commercial driver and the privilege of being a commercial driver. So our other policy that applies to all county employees says that first of all, it prohibits employees from using, possessing, selling, transferring, or being under the influence of drugs or alcohol while working or performing job duties, or while on the county's premises, or while operating county vehicles, machinery, or equipment. So it's prohibited to be under the influence, possessing, or using on the job. Circumstances under which drug and/or alcohol tests shall be required or requested include application process for reasonable suspicion. Nope, I'm reading the wrong. I went back to the commercial driver policy. Sorry, but all county employees are prohibited from using, possessing, selling, or transferring alcohol, cannabis, and other controlled substances while on county-owned property, wherever work for the county is being performed. And there's an exception for law enforcement officials who are in possession of those items because of their investigation duties. The policy says no county employee shall report to the workplace while impaired or influenced by alcohol, cannabis, controlled substances, or other mood-altering drugs, nor shall they consume during work or on breaks. There is not a random testing policy for county employees in general, and that's consistent with the law and protections for employees. And I gotta be honest, there is a problem right now with testing for cannabis because cannabis stays in your system for up to 30 days after use. And you can be positive, you can have a positive test result for cannabis or THC, whether or not you're impaired. And given that this is a substance, it is legal for people to use on their off time, we would have a problem if we were requiring people to test negative, if we didn't have a valid basis for that. Our valid basis is you shouldn't be under the influence, or you can't be under the influence while you're working. So the State Patrol has a pilot project right now for field testing of people to try to determine the level of THC in their system. But right now we don't have anything. Even if we were to suspect impairment, it would be difficult to confirm that through testing. So what do? We train our managers and supervisors and HR professionals to detect signs of impairment, whether it be by cannabis or, misused prescription drugs or by alcohol. And we say you appear to be impaired, and you investigate the situation in other ways. But yes, we do have a policy that prohibits cannabis use or under the influence of cannabis on the job. Any questions about that? I got into the details there.
How does that relate to the ordinance?
Well, I'm just addressing the public comment. That's a good question. I think in general, we're talking about a potential higher prevalence of use again, potential if these retailers are in the county. So there was another public comment related to youth use of cannabis. I've already talked to you and put in my materials that it was a priority of the committee in drafting this to keep cannabis out of the schools. And we're going to continue to try to do that, so.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Commissioner White?
I was in a meeting last night, so I didn't hear it firsthand, but I was told that on public TV out of Duluth, there was a discussion about cannabis, and that the state has a lottery, and 900 or half of them are from out-of-state people. Like, we have, which really means we have absolutely no say into who might get permission to sell cannabis here in Cook County. I mean, that's my takeaway from that. Like, so we could have people from Chicago or from, and I'm only saying, people with a lot of money can be coming here, seeing this as a great potential. They have the money to invest, and they don't, I don't think that's a good, I don't think that's a good idea. When we were talking about this, I'm thinking about our local businesses that might have would probably do their due diligence because they live here, and it would be an opportunity for our local businesses. But as I understood what was being said, it's a lottery, and our businesses, there's a good chance they're not going to get it. So, and we have no idea who's going to get it. And I don't know if they even discussed how the lottery, what we as a county has to say, if there's any impact whatsoever. So we say we only want one, and they'll say, well, we've got 2,200 people that would like to be part of this lottery, and she has an answer.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
I do have a response to the piece about the number. The state will not issue more licenses in Cook County than our ordinance requires. Or allows, thank you. Also, the state will not issue a license in a location that zoning in Cook County does not allow. The initial lottery, yes, I heard the same thing that you heard, that there were a lot of applicants that came from out of state. We don't have the ability to deny a registration based on who applied for it. They're residents. What the law allows us to do is prohibit the unlawful operation of those businesses. If they're operating outside of the operational requirements that the statute has set up, if they're selling to underage, if they're allowing underage people into their store in violation of the ordinance, or if they're trying to establish a location above the 14 or whatever number we set limit. Yep.
So do you know that if we have, say, 20 people from Cook County who put in, when they do the lottery for Cook County, the lottery, when your number gets picked or your name gets picked, do you get to go anywhere you want to go in the state?
So as I understand it, and this is complicated and it's changed, they keep adding information to how this process is happening.
Yeah.
But here's how I understand it. The current lottery is for a pre-approval to allow the social equity applicants to know, yes, your application looks in order, it looks like you're a social equity applicant. But those those licenses aren't going to be issued until the location is identified. Right now, they can apply, the social equity applicants can apply for pre-approval without saying where their store is going to be. But the licenses won't be issued until 2025, and they won't be issued until the location is identified and approved. And the county where that location is identified has an opportunity to review the license application, match up that location to their zoning requirements, do an inspection. We can do a compliance check pre-approval, and we can get back to we must get back to the state within 30 days if we see this location is in violation of zoning, this location is above the number of registrations that we've allowed, or this location it doesn't appear that they can comply with the state requirements for operation. So we do have that ability, and it's built into the rules, which there are draft rules now. The comment period for the draft rules ends in 3 days. And I should mention that I am working with a team through AMC. They invited me to help review those rules, so I've reviewed the parts of it that are specifically pertinent to our discussion here. So anyway, there is a response by the county that is built into the licensing process.
Administrator York.
I was going to add too, I heard Sophie Leininger from the Office of Cannabis Management present on this, and applicants also have to have a viable business plan. So if you're just some dude who's wanting to sell marijuana out of his trench coat or something in front of the Tofty Holiday, you're not going to get a license. So there is a barrier to entry. There's a review process, from my understanding, and compliance with those requirements is part of that.
Well, be that as it may, there's still no guarantee. It's a lottery, and they're not going to just pick from our local businesses. Might totally lose out. I mean, why? I don't see any, one, I'm going back to maybe let's do what Two Harbors did and just have a moratorium, because the state is making it's not going to necessarily in any way, shape, or manner benefit Cook County businesses if they don't get to be someone who actually invests all this money and time for security in if they don't have a shot at doing it because it's a lottery. Like, how lucky are they? I just think this is I don't want to play this game with the state.
Voice privacy contents have been up.
I just don't believe that till the state gets their act together. Like, I feel like they are treading on our rights as a county to say we're going to have a lottery, and we're going to pick X number of people, and if they meet all the criteria, they're coming to your county near you, even though they haven't lived there. I just find that wrong. I don't find that's the one thing. And the other question that came up was the international border, right? Somebody goes across that border, and one way to say it is Border Patrol, they don't have much of a sense of humor. And just because they know you, it doesn't mean anything. This is the law, and I want my Border Patrol to be like that. And so I can just see all sorts of unintended problems where people don't get to come back from Canada, or they're just stopped at the border forever. They don't, because of cannabis. I find that could really happen. I happen to know in their youth where a high school kid forgets that he's got all of these hunting knives in the trunk of his car, and he and his friends are just going up to the mall in Canada. Like, they're idiots. I mean, they can't help it. Their hypothalamuses are not developed. But I could see this happening. I could see this happening. At this point, he lost all of his hunting his hunting knives and was told to go home. But I don't,
There are federal laws and state statutes that are beyond our control.
Oh, yeah.
And so what we need to do is look at this ordinance and determine what controls we can put in place to manage this best for our business community, but for the youth and the families that are here as well, because it's also about keeping our community safe. I have spent a lot of time listening to people. I know all commissioners have done that over the last few weeks. And one thing I feel very strongly about is limiting the number, reducing the number from 14 to 7, so that we are parallel with our liquor establishments. And that will also assist Public Health and Human Services as they begin the process of compliance checks. Let us start small and see how it goes. And if we need to adapt or we need to change, fine. But the thing I'm hearing from our community is to decrease the number of registrations that we have in the county.
Commissioner Sullivan, and well, then to that end, let's have one. One. Let's really reduce it. One. Because if it's going to be a lottery and somebody from who knows where comes, there'll be one. That'll be less work.
It'll be less work. I'm just sharing what
Sure,
I've heard
I
from
understand.
constituents. They feel being parallel to the liquor situation is a good way to start.
Madam Chair, I would also just note that would be less opportunity for local businesses too.
And I'm painfully aware of that. I mean, I've talked to some business owners, and I know that. But I'm thinking of the health and safety of our community, developing a process through public health to do the compliance checks, and I think going slow and steady and getting data so that we all, as we look at this again in the future, have information on how has it changed. For example, looking at the sheriff's office, how many more tickets are being given? How many were related to DUI or a DWI? What's happening with our young people? What are the schools seeing? What is public health seeing? What's Sawtooth Mountain Clinic seeing? And I think collecting information is really important for us as we start. And it's a lot of work, so let us start small and then take a look at it in the future. Commissioner Storley.
We still have control, that's the thing. We can say no, depending upon who wants to come in, where they want to be. As Attorney Hickens said, we still have the last control. And just a side comment, I'm hearing from folks that why can't we opt out? We can't.
Right.
When this was first coming across the states, maybe 15 years ago, the state of Washington, Colorado, some of the individual counties could opt out, no more. I think we're the 24th state to enact a cannabis regulation now, and so we have no choice. So, in not having a choice, let's move forward and be as aware of the future, because as of today, there's 2,000 applicants from other states.
So
let's just be aware that they're all going to be a lottery, and that we have control who comes into our county and who is in our county that wants to have dispensaries.
So a question, Commissioner Storley. So does that mean if somebody, say, from Timbuktu, they get, and they have all of the business plan, they have everything in place, and we say, we would really prefer to have one of our local businesses, we don't get to say that. So we don't have control over that. If they win the lottery and they have the necessary documentation and money, they can come.
We would review that.
And if we say, we don't like this, doesn't matter. If they have the requirements, our businesses do not get to have an opportunity. I mean, they can't say, we can't say, let's just, okay, here's one, but let's give it to our local business, and we can't.
And I understand that, and I'm going to look at the analogy of a teaching license. We don't get to decide who gets licensed to teach in our schools here in our community. They get a state license. And I don't like the fact that with cannabis, that's out of our control and we aren't allowing local people. But again, that's not in our control. Commissioner Johnson, you had a question.
Yeah, I understand that concern, but I'd also like to point out that's how we get new business to Cook County. And whatever business, I agree, I would hate to see all the licenses go to outstate people and all that money being left. But they have to have a piece of property here that will be taxed. So whether or not they rent a place and they're paying lease payments, or they buy a place to operate their business, it's no different than a plumber coming in from out of state and saying, I want to set up shop in Cook County. Maybe they'll choose to live here. Yay! Hopefully you have kids that want to go to our school too. That's what we want.
Right.
So I understand the concern of having nobody that's currently a resident maybe receiving that license. But let's encourage those licensees to make your home in Cook County and live here year-round, not half the year.
And Commissioner Sullivan, to your comparison to teaching licenses, a teaching license, anyone can come to the school district because there's an opening for whatever teaching position, but they don't have to be hired. You don't have to hire them. You can say, this person, and I know it's happened, like they might have all the requisite certifications and license that they need, or degrees that they need, but in the interview process, I recall one situation where it was determined that this particular person's and the personality was not a good fit for the existing culture in the school district. And so in the teaching field, you have, unless you really need a teacher and there's nobody else that applies, you have options. You don't have to hire a teacher simply because, you don't have to hire them. So, and good point, Commissioner Johnson.
And I'd just like to say, I also would lean to reducing the number of registrations, at least for a year. And I think this is something that's still evolving, especially at the state. They don't have their act together yet,
Right.
and they will be making changes and figuring things out. So I would, instead of a complete moratorium, because we have to do something, I'm more inclined to say, well, okay, let's start small, see how it goes, who applies, how's the state regulating it. Don't overburden our Public Health and Human Services Department on that yet. And maybe we'll find out that it's not a big deal, and the next year we say, we want to amend our ordinance because we've learned A, B, and C, whatever, so.
Commissioner White.
So what number are you suggesting for a reduction?
Well, Commissioner Sullivan said 7, and I guess I would be okay with 7. I don't know what the
It's a
right
guess.
number
Right.
is.
Well, and there's not a right number. It's based on what we hear from the public and how we imagine our Public Health and Human Services staff can support this, and input that we've had from the Sheriff's Office. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to that. Any other questions or comments?
Commissioner? So just a public clarification, we have no say in whether or not there will be cannabis sold in this county.
Correct.
Has this gone to court?
We need to allow at least one retailer that is a non-government, non-municipal retailer.
But Beck, has this gone to court, these other cities that did not want to have, it hasn't?
I don't think we're at that point yet because there haven't been licensed I would assume.
Right, it's all,
Yeah.
okay.
Commissioner Mills.
I appreciate the concerns. It's just important to know where our authority comes from. It comes from the state. Every single bit of authority that the county board has is an arm of the state. And so our authority is granted to us. It's not that we have it and we can, defend our rights. It's that it's granted to us. And so it's important to know the structure of the government and just where we fit in, what our role is. We have had says throughout this process. The thing is there's 87 counties and there's other very large municipalities, and they also have says in this process. And so we've been a part of the conversation from whenever that was, 2018 or something. And there's been a lot of compromises. There's been a lot of strategies. We're just taking things step by step and doing what's best for our county as we can. I mean, we could enact a moratorium, and that would get us all the way to January 1st of 2025. That's all that would do.
Couple of months.
Yeah, so it's like, I think it's very silly that other places are doing moratoriums, because they're just burning time here. If we've been kind of proactive on this and really trying to get ahead of it, I think it's really wise to scale back and to do that slow thing and to amend later on as we see what's what and how the state plays out. So, but that parity with alcohol, there's such a stigma and there's so much unknown as well about cannabis. We're learning new things every day. I forget, there's like hundreds of cannabinoids in there. THC is the big one you hear about because that has a big immediate effect or whatever, and CBD too is another one, which is a lower effect on the brain or whatever, but there's other ones too. And so because it's been illegal, and it still is federally, I think the DEA is looking at rescheduling, but now that's not going to be until after the election. There's just so many things up in the air, and we're learning so much that taking it slow, I think, is wise, but also trying to be proactive at the same time. It's a very tricky situation. So our ordinance committee, I think, has done a really thorough job at looking at the ins and outs, trying to protect our youth, trying to respect the law, and trying to also enable business opportunities and property owners to exercise their rights. And so I'm not a fan of outside businesses coming in, but I think the whole point about having property, I mean, imagine some big Russian dispensary comes in and opens up. Who's gonna work there? There's no employees in Cook County. Like, this is really gonna be, I think, a locally driven industry. There's potential for not, but you could say the same for McDonald's. Why isn't there McDonald's? It's just, there's lots of different ins and outs here. So, and of course, there's so many unknowns that makes it hard to make these decisions, and a little frightening at times, but I think we've done all we can to this point. And there's just more to do as well, but time will tell, and our staff will tell, the sheriff will tell, our schools will tell, the clinic will tell, the hospital, and we'll hear plenty too from residents. But I think it's also worth noting that there has been low potency edibles in our community, apparently sold at 13 different retailers since 2018. That's when the Farm Bill passed, and it's been around. And so what I've heard from the Sheriff's Department is that has not resulted in more cannabis-related problems, if any reports at all, but that is a lower dose or whatever, but you just eat more and it's the same thing. So it's all very strange and dynamic, but I think we're doing a good job. I really do.
And I feel confident that Attorney Hicken is really looking at this carefully. You've been on our AMC groups, and through MCIT later this week, there's a training that a number of us are going to. So I think we need to stay on top of it and collect that data once we have an approved ordinance. But I'm going to make a motion to reduce the number of establishments from 14 to 7, I should say, registrations, from 14 to 7, so by 50%, and And that means we're going to have an additional public hearing, just so everyone is clear on that.
I will second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And I would like to add that I'm well aware and very appreciative of all the work that David and that whole group and that
Mr.
they've
Starler.
done going forward, which was, it's hard to second guess a group of people who have spent countless hours discussing it and coming in. So I'm well aware of that, but I still hearing that, I'm just getting over the fact that our local people, that just really irks me.
Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Attorney Hicken.
Thank you. So now that the board has moved to change that number, I would ask that there be a motion for to set a public hearing at the time of it would be the second regular board meeting in September, and then to direct the publishing of the notice for that public hearing. So would that be the 24th? Or
It would.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to set the public hearing for our cannabis regulation ordinance for September 24th at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. All right, we will move on to Auditor Powers, who's been so quiet this morning. Now we're going to give him an opportunity.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, first item is a Firewise brush disposal pit agreement. This is a renewal. It's a 5-year renewal. This would expire on June 15th, 2029. It's between us and the United States Forest Service, which owns the land on which these sites are. So the only change in the agreement is that Carlton, there's a pit now for the Carlton mountain area. So otherwise, it's essentially the same. So
Any questions for Auditor Powers?
So it's
Commissioner Mills.
less of a pit and more of a peak then? Is that-
it's a pit within a peak,
Wow.
yeah.
They all are quite peaked
Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah, I think these are key to the Firewise effort, because if we didn't have these pits, we'd have to create them, or people would, be disincentivized to do a lot of cutting, or they'd be piling it somewhere or burning it when they shouldn't.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 5-year agreement, 5-year agreement with the Forest Service for the maintenance of the brush disposal sites listed.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is an airport grant agreement amendment. So we approved this agreement for the airport for a $32,000 grant through the American Rescue Plan of 2021. We did that in 2022. This is a federal grant, and it allowed for 4 years to spend the money. But when the state approved the agreement with us and all others across the state, they shortened that timeline, and it was expiring this year on September 30th. They realized that I think a large number had not spent the money yet, and so they decided to extend this on our behalf. So This is just for an extension. Otherwise, it all remains the same as what we originally approved.
Any question for Auditor Powers? If not, I'd like to make a motion to approve amending by resolution the airport grant agreement to extend the deadline to January 25th of 2026. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And the next item is for a resolution to accept an IRRB revenue bond grant. And this is the one, we changed the agenda item, which had separated two parts of this project. But the IRRB is giving us money. We call them two projects, but they asked us to combine it into one for their purposes. So we're combining it. It's a combination of the transfer station facility project and an affordable housing apartment project, and that's the Harbor View Apartments in town here. So this is for, the resolution is to accept the $2 million in grant funds from IRRB to construct the transfer station facility in Grand Marais and $250,000 for an affordable housing apartment project. So the county, we initially applied through the regular state bonding, which of course didn't get approved this year. That money comes to you pretty much without strings attached, but since that didn't pass, our legislators, with our project and a bunch of other projects, they said, well, we'll authorize that for IRRB bonding. So there's a total of $49 million of these various projects, of which we have two of them. And let's say the complication with this is that IRRB does have strings, let's call them that. There's an application process, and then there's what kind of wage? Prevailing wage that has to attach to these projects. And the funds must be spent within 30 months of when their state bond sale occurs, which they expect to happen in November, which pushes up their timeline, which means this application has to be in by the end of this week, on the 30th. So you're not given a lot of time to make a decision on this.
And Brady, if I could just add,
Yeah.
none of this was evident to us until we had a phone call with IRRR less than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So we've been scrambling to get ready. We have this, you see this project form. That's not the actual application. That'll be taken, IRRB will review that, and then we'll be putting it into their application system, the portions of this to fit their application during the rest of the week, or however long it takes. So to a little more detail, the affordable housing project portion is supported by a $1.65 million of private funds that would purchase the Harbor View Apartments, those 31 units, and this will allow it to stay affordable for 12 years, affordable units, and plus the $250,000 of IRRB revenue bond funds. And for the transfer station, it's supported by $450,000 of IRRB infrastructure grant. This has already been secured. An $800,000 deed energy transition grant and $363,351 of private equity that North Shore has already put into the project preparation, and the $2 million of IRRB revenue bonds. However, that entire project is estimated to be around $6 million, and it is short about 2.5 million. They attempted to get federal funding through federal legislative earmarks, but that was not approved. So at this point, they are short that amount, and in order to receive the IRRB funds, we have to, in the application, say that we have secured all of the funding for this project. So this is kind of a key decision today for this to go forward to get the $2 million for that project, is that we have to say we have this funding and that we will spend it within 3 years for this project. We've talked, one option is that the county could issue solid waste revenue bonds. They're designed for solid waste projects, and we could issue those on behalf of this project, and then we could then on property taxes, that's one method, is that we could then have this fee or charge on property taxes for residents here that would then pay the bill. So the other is that North Shore raises fees on who uses their service in sufficient amount to pay the bonds. But not everybody subscribes. A lot of people bring their garbage there and so forth. So it's not a simple process as it may be in other places. Tim Nelson dealt with this in Clearwater County, where it did work for how their service was used in Clearwater, a little bit different in Cook County. So a lot of information, or let's see, for thought, but not a lot of time for thought.
So moved.
So moved. And just should point out that Jason is here to answer any questions about the affordable housing apartment project. So.
I see that both Jason is here and Rena and Dustin are
Sorry.
here as well.
You guys moved. I glanced back, I thought you guys had left, sorry.
So what I'd suggest is that maybe you come forward to a microphone, and maybe one of our microphones could be moved to appropriate seating, just so if commissioners have questions or you have information that you would like to share, that the public can hear this as well. So again, we're looking at combining these resolutions that were separated out initially on the agenda, and it would be an acceptance of the IRRR revenue bond for affordable housing, which is Harborview, and then the revenue bond grant for the transfer station. So that's the way the resolution would look out. Are there questions that individuals have for either the HRA or for North Shore Waste? Are there any comments that you would wish to share?
I'll chair it, or, yes, chair. Sorry, my brain is about 10 places right now. I'd just like to add to Auditor Powers and Administrator Yorkie's comments that this is a bit of a fast turnaround both for the county and for IRRR. I think that they weren't anticipating this in the same way either. So both of these projects, although very different, have obviously have plans that were outside of this particular, the mechanics that they end up happening with regard to going through the IRRR process, the application process, the subsequent requirements. And so at this juncture, we're trying to recognize and appreciate the funding that the state is providing, and then also recognizing that there are complications that have come along with that. So we're trying to make the best out of it and make sure we don't lose these funds, and adapting on the fly, so to speak. And I know for myself, I can't speak for the transfer station project, but I have a series of questions out to IRRR about this particular application, and to make sure that we are, this project is going to be able to adhere to all those things, and how can we get creative with how these funds are used, because it is creating some dissonance with the original intent of the HRA working on this project. So all that's to say, You can't plan for these sorts of things, but all we can do is try to adapt quickly, and still, the money is still worth using and worth putting into these projects. So that's my comment.
And I would like to say from the HRA meeting that we had last week, that it helps keep 31 units affordable. It's so important for our community to do that. And I so appreciate the new owner of that property hanging in there with all this new language, new direction that we have to take, looking at prevailing wage. But I think that as a team, we can save those housing units. And that means a lot to those 31 individuals and families that live in those units.
Just a point of clarification, Chair. It's 31 units total in the building, 21 of which would be reserved for the Section 8 housing. I just want to be clear for the public, too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Commissioner Johnson.
I guess my question is more for Brady, the administration. So we talked about this at our committee of the whole about reaching out to Ellers. So this says we have infrastructure bonds, but really IRRB just wants you to know that's what you're thinking. And if we decide not, maybe we use fund balance or whatever. I just want to clarify, I'm not voting for you guys to go out and get bonds without it coming back to us and that discussion, right?
It can't. Would have
That's
to
what I
come
mean.
back to you. Yeah.
So they're okay with us saying, that's what we think we're going to do?
Yes.
Okay.
They
I
made-
just want
I
to make sure
think they made
we're
that-
on the same page here, that you're not signing something
No.
that says, we have infrastructure bonds for this.
No.
No. They understand this is a plan.
Okay.
Thank you for
And we did talk with Bruce Kimmel at Ellers yesterday. We still have some questions about how this mechanism works. But, I mean, he's confident. He actually thinks that if we back it up, we get the revenue bonds, but we back it up with general obligation bonding, that we could get like a AAA rating on the bonds. So the interest rate would be very favorable. But we're still exploring how those pieces fit together, and we have started that conversation with Ellers.
Yeah, and he's reaching out to bond attorneys too, just to make sure exactly how it might work so that you would understand that clearly before you made that decision.
And so as far as a timeline here, so this has to be in by Friday, and then you have to do another one, and then there's something else. I'm just wondering, when can we as a county board expect to vote on issuing those bonds? Do we have a time frame of when they need to know we did it?
We have a follow-up meeting with Bruce scheduled for next week. So right now, we're in the information gathering phase. And I don't know, we'll have more information on September 10th. I doubt that we'll be ready to have a bond proposal ready for you on that date. I don't think it'd happen that quickly. Probably, within a month or two, I would think. So.
Other questions or comments?
So the other thing that that we talked about at the committee of the whole meeting last week was getting the funding in place to do the engineering work for the transfer station. And I should mention too, just for folks who may be tuning in for the first time, the evolution of this whole process with the transfer station is that initially, when the county was asked to sponsor a bonding application to the state, it was our expectation and the sponsor and North Shore Waste's expectation that they would own the facility. We would apply for the funding from the state. We would pass it through to North Shore Waste so that they could build this transfer station. As we started having conversations with Minnesota Management and Budget, they were telling us, you can't do that because these are public funds. And so we can only make those funds available to you if it is a publicly owned facility. And that made us pivot a little bit. And at that point, then we started talking, we asked MMB, how does this work? And they gave us an example of how mental health facilities in other parts of the state have been funded, where basically we would lease the land from North Shore Waste. They would give us a long-term lease. We would then be responsible for financing the building, which is what all the bonding is for, and the congressionally directed spending requests that we made to our senators. We would own the building, but then we would have an operations agreement with North Shore Waste. They would operate and run the facility. And so that's where we are now, and that's why and that's how we're able to get the public funding for this project. But we have heard from IRRR and others that they want to see the county have some skin in the game. And so the bonding really helps us check that box. We have to get that last piece in place. And again, there are multiple benefits associated with construction of this transfer station. Environmental benefits related to not processing waste outdoors, where we've got lead paint chips just falling to the ground. We would be able to process trash picked up from residences indoors, which would allow North Shore Waste, instead of driving Packer trucks to Duluth every day, they would be able to load the municipal solid waste into a semi-trailer, would significantly improve their fuel costs, reduce emissions, et cetera. And so there are lots of benefits that go along with doing this. And I think everybody in the county, because North Shore Waste is now the only solid waste hauler in the county, all of us stand to benefit from this work. And so the county's investment here, I see as just kind of a no-brainer. We all have a stake in this. We all want to have a better way of handling our waste. And so that is why we're having this whole conversation. The other thing we talked about last week, as I mentioned, talked about the engineering for the project, and we do have some county funds in the amount of about $330,000 that are immediately available to get that work underway. That's going to be really important because, like Brady mentioned, once IRRR issues bonds in November, there's a 30-month clock that starts ticking, and we have to have the funds fully expended by the end of that. And so it's important that we start getting all the pieces in place so that we have plans, so that when we get the money, we can move full steam ahead with the construction of the station. So that's the other part that I wanted to remind you all of. And what I've heard from the board, I think we all, support the project, but that's another piece of the financial commitment that we need to make. And I think the conversation last week at the Committee of the Whole, we were talking about possibly using $200,000 of that $330,000 for the engineering work. And that would leave a sufficient amount for us to continue purchasing equipment for the recycling center.
Dustin and Rena, anything you would like to add?
James did a great job. I don't know that there's much we can add to it. Brady.
I hear you have openings.
Yeah, if any of you are looking, we'll take you on.
Full-time?
Full-time. Do you have anything
All
you
right.
want to say? I think you did a really great job explaining all of it, both of you. I don't know that there's a lot we can add to it.
Okay. Commissioner Mills.
I just want to point out that if it were not for North Shore Waste, we would be having to do this all on the counties. It is ultimately our responsibility. And because we have such a great partner, we're able to share the burden and the responsibility. And hopefully, it's going to be a viable path for your business, and it certainly is a necessary service in our community. So I think this is money well spent and well invested in our community, and with such great partnership, I think it's just we have very few options, and we're lucky to have this one. So.
And the way the state has it set up, it helps protect solid waste in Cook County for years to come. The county's going to own this building. If something were to happen to Barry and I, you guys have a facility to process solid waste for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Any other discussion, questions, remarks? If not.
I'd like to make a motion to apply for and accept the $2 million in grant funds from IRRR bonds to construct the transfer station facility in Grand Marais.
And accept?
Was that not
We're
included in
combining.
the 2 million? Thank you.
We're combining the resolution.
As well as the 250 for our HRA project as well.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills.
Just also want to share my gratitude for the HRA and the HR director for trying to facilitate this, because if it were not for the HRA, more than likely, these would not be affordable housing. They would be market rate, just like that. And it'd be a lot worse for our community. So appreciate the work and efforts there, too.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you
Thank you,
so
Commissioners.
much. All right. Administrator Yorkie.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things to report on this week. Not that there's not tons of stuff going on, but a couple of key things I wanted to loop you in on. We have continued the master planning process for the courthouse and the community center. And where we are now, pardon me, where we are now is we had another round of meetings last week. We are kind of whittling down the concepts that we've been talking about and trying to come up with kind of a final proposal that we will present to the board on September 24th. Have had really great discussion, and all of the departments that would be impacted by this move, by the change in the configuration of this building and the potential construction of a building up the community center, have been involved in providing input and talking about operational needs. And so I feel like it's been a very thorough process. And again, tipping my hat to BKV Group, which has really listened closely. And the design work that they're doing for us is just completely reflects everything that we've talked about. And so they're doing a really great job. We do have a follow-up meeting. Is it next week or the week? It's the week after, I think. I think it's the week after. To kind of whittle down and kind of tighten up the proposal that we will then bring to the board on September 24th. And again, Commissioner White has been participating in that process too. And Commissioner, if you have any things that you'd like to add about what you've heard to date and the process.
I'm very pleased with the BKV group and their interactions with us. Their listening, their communication skills, the information they know about what the rules and regulations are, not only for the courthouse, but for social services. And I think, and again, I think we're getting value. For people that don't know, they're still here, but they're not just running up their bill. They agreed to a set amount to do this work. So if they come another 4 times or 5 times, it doesn't matter. They don't get any more money. So that's been an issue that I've heard about.
And I would agree with that. The value, it's a $25,000 contract plus incidental expenses, travel and so on. The value that we're getting out of that money is pretty enormous.
And how many times have we met with them now? This go around?
We've had a series of 3 multi-day meetings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So.
Yeah. So they're doing a great job. And again, we plan to come forward on the 24th of September with a proposal. BKV will be here to present that. Also wanted to let you know, the board directed me to ask BKV to put together a proposal for the Law Enforcement Center addition. They are working on that, and I had a chance to catch up with Henry about that last week. And they're getting close to having that ready. So I would expect possibly even by the next meeting, we'll have something to share about that. So that is pretty exciting. A third thing, I received an email at the end of last week inquiring about county tax abatement for the Heights project. And so that is something, I'm just mentioning this to put it on your radar. I know that the real estate investment group that is sponsoring the Heights apartment project, they are working with Ellers to put together a proposal. They're going to be seeking abatements both from the city and the county. And I have no more information for you than that. I just know that it's coming, and we'll have to look at the numbers when they're available, and that might be as early as the next meeting as well. So I didn't want you to be caught off guard by that. And I was talking with Gary Latz yesterday. Their hope is that they can actually start the site work this fall, once all the financial pieces are in place, and get that site work done, the foundation in, so that come spring, it would just be a process of bringing in the modular units and putting the whole thing together. So in an ideal world, that's how things will transpire, but obviously, we don't live in an ideal world. So we'll see how that goes. But just want you guys to be aware of that. The last thing I'll mention is that we have made an offer for a facilities director. We're awaiting confirmation from our pick that he will be able to accept that offer. So I expect to have more about that at the next meeting, and hopefully even a job offer for you all to approve. So.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, so commissioner updates. Commissioner Johnson.
I attended the ARC meeting, Arrowhead Regional Corrections meeting, and we approved the final budget for 2025, and I meant to bring it for Brady if he didn't have it, and it's on my counter, so I'll get that to you later. Actually, a little bit lower number than last year, so
Okay.
Right in the ballpark.
I got the packet.
You got it, so.
All right, good, thank you. Commissioner White.
Well, I think I reported, where have I been? The Northern Counties Land Use, we met, that was the last time I was here and talked about that. Last night was the North Shore Management Board met, and that's, it deals with the waters of Lake Superior along the shoreline. So I learned a lot more about that in their new, is she a director? I don't know what her title is, but Linnell, is she the director now of this?
No, well, she's the committee chair.
She's a committee chair for this, and she's new too and learning, and it was a very well-run meeting over at our much-loved community center. So I think that's that was the most exciting one, which was pretty low-key, but it was the most informational one. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
I have nothing to report today.
Okay. Commissioner Storley.
Yes, I had a town hall meeting last week in regards to the school bonding, because I was hearing from people, they were confused about the 1, 2, 3, and if the first one fails, then the rest fails, and if this one doesn't, that one does. So Superintendent Lindholm came out, and we had a small group, but it was good information. And I would just encourage all of us to, be aware that this is a big ask, 36 million, but some of the areas are well needed in all three of the specifics on that. This coming Saturday, I'll be attending the Caribou Lake Association meeting. They meet twice a year. They meet on the weekends of holidays. Can you imagine? A Memorial and Labor Day, but I'm in the neighborhood, so I'll be able to go.
Thank you very much. Well, I had a chance to attend the Cook County Historical Society meeting where they recently adopted a new strategic plan. It's really exciting, and so they will be putting that out with our minutes, and it will be included for all our commissioners to look at. They also hosted their Plink Trout dinner down at the community the community's campground, and literally sold every last piece of trout. There were a few pieces left, and that smell was spreading throughout the campground, and all of a sudden people were there wanting to take to-go boxes back to their campsites. So it was well attended. I saw Commissioner Storley there. But it was great to have that back. That has been missing since COVID hit. And of course, you're cramped in a small building, particularly if it's rainy out, and so it was really nice. We had seating inside, but it was a beautiful day, and people could be outside, and so great event. The HRA met, as I mentioned earlier, last week, and I'm sure people have read in the paper or seen on WTIP, if they didn't watch the city council meeting, that the Bjorkberg project was voted down. And the HRA is disappointed with that outcome of the city council vote, but the city has been such a valued partner for the HRA, have helped us with, the Gunflint View, those 51 units of mixed income housing. They help with Hamilton Habitat and have supported that. And so we are just back to work on other projects and continuing to move forward. And thinking of weekend and Labor Day events, I'll be at the Loon Lake Bay Road Association on Saturday, and I'm looking forward to that. Commissioner Mills.
There were two things I was hoping we could talk about. First is the Department of Children, Youth, and Families meetings that I've been attending. Hoping to get that on my list of official responsibilities. There are two different meetings. One is just county people, where we kind of huddle up and talk amongst the county issues, and then also there's one where we go to the state and huddle with the state and talk about how things are going there. And it's been really great learning about that and seeing the dynamics, the concerns, whether it's from the metro or outstate and some of those other multi-county organizations. The transition thus far has been more or less uneventful, which is a huge positive. Commissioner Tiki Brown, the takeaway that I will never forget is just saying nothing drops. We don't want anything to fall through the cracks here. We want this to be a smooth transition. So there's still concerns because it is a phased transition, but it's going very well. The most recent concerns that are being brought up is there was a lot of difficulties early on, and I was not a part of the group at that point, and so I'm only picking up kind of that history, and now things seem like extremely smooth. However, people are concerned that state leadership, particularly Commissioner Brown, is not as directly available because the department is up and running. Now the real job is happening versus just planning for it. And so we're really making efforts to make sure those direct lines of communication are open, and anyone that we're familiar with in the department is encouraged to really double down on those relationships and keep those lines of communication going. So that's pretty good. The other one, though, is regarding our AMC committee meetings, and I didn't know who of us are able to attend the Fall Policy Conference. It's still not clear that I will be able to attend. I recognize the lodging block is full, and lodging will have to be figured out. I'm still hoping to. But what I'm really hoping to do is get on the General Government Committee, which Commissioner Johnson currently holds, because there's been kind of this call for interested people regarding some of the tax issues. And one of the tax issues that I am particularly interested in, I hope we all are, is a local option sales tax, because of how that can leverage visitor dollars for our community. And so that's something I would like to pursue more, but technically, it's not my purview at this point because it is Commissioner Johnson's assignment. So I wanted to talk about that again. I brought it up earlier, but we just haven't talked more about that. So didn't know if you were going to be able to attend that.
I am willing to cede that committee to you for the policy, for that weekend for them, as long as you can send me updates.
Yeah, and it's not.
I don't think I will be able to attend. That's
okay.
We're still.
And I'm not certain that I can either, but I want to make efforts in that direction. It's just still a juggling act, and so,
So.
Okay, that'd be wonderful.
We will make sure that opportunity is there for you, Commissioner Mills, and Commissioner Johnson. I'll send an email to AMC indicating that you have asked Commissioner Mills to attend if able.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'll just let the board know as I can if I'm going or not. but it'll probably come down to the last minute.
All right, that's fine. Any other items for the good of the order? We have some correspondence, and with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Anything further? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Give me a little information on children with and families.